20 years in the United States government working for the military. This show is about finding some truth. Was the CIA responsible for, in any way, shape, or form, funneling cocaine into the United States of America, helping to turn it into crack, and turning it into what is now devastated the majority of the inner cities of America? We're talking today, this is really a show about what we can call rumors. The rumor that the CIA was involved in making sure that cocaine made it to the streets of South Central LA back in the early 80s, and then helped to develop and turn it into crack, which was then spread across America, and is the reason why most of our inner cities are in the plight that they are in. And a lot of this has been out there for years, but it wasn't until recently that the story broke again. And my next guest is a reporter from San Jose Mercury News, and he wrote a story called The Dark Alliance. Please welcome Mr. Gary Webb to the show. And Gary, this really, I think the current fervor over this issue is because of your article. A lot of people may not be familiar with what the Dark Alliance meant and stands for. Why don't you tell America what the story is about first, and then we'll talk about the issues.
It was about a cocaine ring that operated along the west coast of the United States throughout most of the 80s. And they were funneling, they were selling cocaine in South Central. They were also selling it in Oakland. They were selling it in San Francisco. They were selling it in San Jose. And some of the money they were making was going to support an army that the men who ran the cocaine ring worked for, called the FDN. This was an army that the CIA started in 1981 and supported.
Better known to us, most of us who remember news, the Contras from Nicaragua. So go right ahead.
The men that were running the cocaine ring were top officials of this Contra army. And what we found was that they were selling this stuff in South Central, which is, predominantly black section of Los Angeles, immediately before the outbreak of the crack cocaine epidemic. They started selling powder. Tons and tons and tons of powder cocaine was going into this one small area of the city. And from there, they sold it to Freeway Rick. And Freeway Rick took the powder, turned it into crack, and starting in 1983, 1984, began distributing it to predominantly the gangs, the Crips and the Bloods in Los Angeles. And they spread it, from there.
From there. Now, since this has happened, you have butted heads with everybody in Washington, D.C., trying to get information about the story. Have you not?
Yeah, we worked on this for a year, and it was only because, some people at National Archives believe freedom of information means freedom of information. We got some documents that showed that pretty strongly that there were some CIA connections to this.
Let's talk a little bit about those documents for a second, because there's a gentleman, this figure that we talked about yesterday on the show. His name is Blandón. Danilo Blandón, who was a person who was a member of the aristocracy of Nicaragua before the fall of Somoza, and then he fled and comes to the United States and decides, while he's in the United States, so you can all understand this, he wants to raise money for the revolutionaries who are trying to overthrow the government that just overthrew them. So here in the United States, they try to do fundraisers, and that doesn't work, and then Blandón gets a scheme. Well, I can get some cocaine cheaply with some help from some of my friends and get it into the United States of America. All I need to find is somebody who can sell it. So they find a gentleman by the name of Rick Ross, who is Freeway Rick. Rick Ross comes in and starts selling cocaine at the terms beginning 1 or 2 grams, and within weeks 2, 3, 4 kilos a week. Within months, what was it, 10 to 15 kilos a day. Ricky Ross was selling cocaine to the point of making $3 to $4 million a day. He sold so much cocaine, it hurt his fingers to count the money. Not only in Los Angeles, but in Cincinnati, in St. Louis, all the way across America. So some can say, and this is the reason why people are so angry at you in your article, is that Ricky Ross, the dope dealer, was supplied by the CIA because Blandón was an operative for the CIA, correct?
Blandón and Meneses were working for an army that was a wholly owned subsidiary of the CIA. They were meeting with CIA agents. Blandón, and this came out in court. I mean, Danilo Blandón is now a government witness. He works for the Drug Enforcement Administration, and we've paid him, I don't know, $166,000 over the last 18 months because he's such a good informant. So they put him on the witness stand in Ricky Ross's case, and he testified that in 1981, he went to Honduras, he met with the commander, the military commander of the CIA's army, and he was instructed to go raise money in California for this Contra army. And he was told that the ends justified the means.
And those ends being sell cocaine if you have to.
Well, look, he was in the room with the Nicaraguan representative of the Cali cartel, Mr. Meneses, And he was in the room with a government marketing expert named Danilo Blandón. Now, if they weren't talking about selling cocaine, I don't know what they were talking about.
And this is all information they can find on a website. I have to use that website, but on a website on the internet. So we're going to put that up so people can go and
look at these documents
take a look at the documents yourself and judge it. But Michael, now, I mean, there's a stretch here. Here's a guy who is obviously a CIA operative, Mr. Blandón, who is working with this government-backed army that we've kind of created in Nicaragua. But how the heck does this guy get to bring in tons of cocaine? When I say ton, I'm talking tons. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tons of cocaine weekly in the United States of America for 7 years, and no one can ever catch him.
Well, number one, Mr. Meneses was actually indicted in 1984. He was known within, my own sources in DEA told me he was known as El Rey de la Droga, the king of drugs. He was in more than 40 files and indicted mysteriously, and people within DEA say that it was CIA intervention that kept this sealed indictment from ever being opened. So he was well known. He's well known. The connection between him, Blandón, and Calero, who was the head of the Nicaraguan government in exile, is clear. There's a clear evidentiary.
Well, we got a picture of it.
Yeah, there's a clear evidentiary trail. Now, if you want to follow that trail up, you have to first understand how CIA and DEA work. I was a country attaché assigned to Argentina. Now, during those years, there were people who I inherited on the payroll who were murderers. They were also on the CIA payroll. So,
Murderers on the CIA payroll.
Not only murderers, I'm talking about mass murderers. And I wrote about it in books that I thought would have America marching on Washington. Nothing ever
Michael,
happened.
how are you alive today?
A miracle. Just absolutely.
Why didn't the CIA bump you off before you came to the Montel Williams show? Because to me, they will say tomorrow, he's a kook, he's crazy, don't believe anything he has to say, don't worry about it, there's no conspiracy.
Well, at the same time, DEA called me one of their best in a New York Times article. God bless Gary Webb. I've been trying to tell this, and other DEA agents are now coming out trying to tell this story.
But did the CIA know that drugs were coming into the United States of America and help it get here? The answer to the question is yes.
Absolutely.
Does the CIA do this on a regular basis? The answer to the question is
Absolutely. I wish I could take them to court.